Okay, everyone. Look, welcome. As most of you know, my name's Graham Smith and I'm chair of the Judges and Officials Committee of the Arabian Horse Society of Australia. I wanted to thank you for taking the time to come here tonight. It's cold and windy across most of the southern parts of Australia, so I appreciate you making the effort. I also wanted to welcome our current chair of the Arabian Horse Society, Mr. Adam King, and some of our board members as well that are here tonight. Every state and territory in Australia is represented here tonight, apart from the Northern Territory. We've been pleased with the overall take-up rate of the seminar. We've had some 60 judges nominate online. And I also wanted to acknowledge, we've got Janet Court here from England. Janet was one of our guest speakers last week, a fortnight ago, and when she heard about the presentations from Johnny and Lisa, she asked if she could sit in on that. So welcome to you, Janet, as well from the UK. The JOC and the board are pleased to be able to offer these free range of seminars with our international and domestic speakers to help you, our judges, through your learning and education processes. We sincerely hope that you enjoy the seminar tonight and any of those that we provide into the future. As I've mentioned previously, COVID is impacting on all of us in the way we're conducting our lives and the way we embrace new ways of doing things. And Zoom is one of those formats that we've had to embrace and use this approach to help us with our learning and education. We know that it may not be the optimum solution. We all would prefer to see live horses, but we think it's one of the tools at our disposal that we should use. And none of us know how long lockdown's going to be. There's some horrific cases at the moment in New South Wales, numbers wise, and we just don't know what's going to happen. But at this stage, thanks everyone for trying new things, trying new technology. It's great that you've embraced it so readily, so thank you. Now, before I start, I just mentioned before about muting your computers. We do get feedback through to the speakers. By all means, when you want to ask a question, you can unmute yourself. We also have the chat function, which is on the bottom bar or the top bar, depending on what type of computer you've got, but you can type in a question if you've got one, and I'll get access to that. And questions, if you'd like to hit the reactions bar, you'll see that there's a screen that will come up with a hands up request. So please put that on if you like to ask a question. We'll try and put those in between gaps with the speakers when we get a break. And if I see it, I'll try and jump in for you. And finally, this seminar is being recorded. So I need to ask that if anyone has an issue with this arrangement, that they can excuse themselves from the seminar. Helen, I can see that we've got the recording button going, but I just want to double check we're all fine.
Yep.
Okay. We will be downloading a copy of this seminar to our Arabian Horse Society Judges Education page in the next few days. And I just wanted to again thank Helen and Therese for their support in the office and you know, the last couple of weeks with trying to get this seminar series together. I really do appreciate their work. So some introductions. Tonight we have two extremely well-credentialed speakers who are experts in their chosen fields who've been engaged for you tonight to speak. They are both passionate equestrians, they love horses, and they're making their time available to assist us all tonight by passing on some of their knowledge. I really would encourage you to participate tonight by asking questions and seeking further information on matters that are of interest to you. I'll formally introduce our second speaker, Lisa Stevens, a little bit later once we hear from our first speaker, Johnny Walker. So firstly, it gives me great pleasure to welcome and introduce Dr. Johnny Walker, Bachelor of Veterinary Science. Johnny has many qualifications and highlights to his professional career as a vet, but some of the key points I would highlight are that he is also a FEI vet, having provided assistance to Olympic gold medalists. He has travelled extensively, both domestically and internationally, to provide advice and guidance on a wide range of performance horses. He has provided assistance to a number of leading racehorse stables, including those of Gay Waterhouse and Lee Friedman. and he has provided assistance or had the privilege of providing the assistance to some famous racehorses such as Miss Andretti and the 3 times winning Melbourne Cup horse Makybe Diva. He is part-owned eventers with Olympian Shane Rose, and along with his partner Leanne, continues to show horses and to be engaged in the equestrian community with show hacks. We are lucky to have Johnny with us tonight to draw on his wealth of experience as a vet of world-class acclaim, and also as someone who intimately understands the nuances of the show ring and the role of our judges. So look, it gives me great pleasure to formally welcome you here tonight, Johnny. Welcome.
Thanks, Graham. I'll just bring up the slideshow and just assume that everybody can hear me. Is that sounding okay?
Okay by me. I think.
Yeah, all right. Well, that'll do.
Yep.
So thanks very much for that very kind introduction, Graham. I'm lucky enough to have found my niche, I guess, a little bit in working with horses and performance horses in particular. I've done a few other bits and pieces along the way. My first boss was Dennis Golding, who looked after the Australian Olympic team, 3 gold medals and a silver, not a bad effort. Worked at Golden Valley, did an internship there, went and worked at the Equine Centre, where I looked after Gaze horses for about 6 years, and then came back to Melbourne, established my own business. As Graham said, looked after Lee's horses. Shane Rose has been a very good friend for a long time. I own a couple of show jumpers at the moment, and I've got 3 show hacks myself off the track thoroughbreds. 2 of them are stallions, and so I do have an interest very much in the show ring as an active participant / bill payer, and also my real interest is in lameness and managing performance horses. But what I'm going to try and show you guys tonight is how easy, as judges, how much of a parallel there is between what happens in our standard lameness exam, and I'll take you through that. And I want you guys to think about how that correlates to what you can assess in the show ring. And I'm going to give you some tools, some very basic but very accurate tools to determine whether or not a horse is actually lame. And we don't want lame horses in the show ring, absolutely, but nor do we want to condemn a horse that maybe looks lame but actually isn't lame. So I'm going to try and give you some tools based around a veterinarian's assessment and how we look, or how I look at a lameness exam anyway. And you'll be, I think, most intrigued at least as to how well, I can do that, because that's what I'm looking at anyway. So lameness in the show ring. So assessing the lame horse, and this is how I assess a lame horse when I'm presented with it, whether it's a Shetland pony, a World Cup show jumper, or a racing thoroughbred. First thing we do, I want to get a history on this horse, okay? And when I bring up, as you see on the other side of the screen there, as judges, I'm going to make a little comparison here, and this is a really important slide. First thing, history. What's it got a history of? Yeah, it's had surgery on a knee. Yeah, it's had a sore foot, blah, blah, blah. It gives you some clue as to where you might direct your attention. And it's an important tool when assessing a lameness for me. I want to know what its history is. I may never have seen this horse before. I'd like to know what that history is. Next thing, as I stand there and I look at it, and I go, right, what do I notice here that shouldn't be there? Where's that swelling? Has it got a cut on its leg? Is it missing half its foot? Is it leaning to one side? Is it actually missing a shoe? Or is that shoe not sitting right? Before I've even gone near the horse or even considered touching the horse, the next most important thing that for me assessing a lameness is, what do I see? The single most important observant person I've ever met in my life is Gay Waterhouse. Never missed a beat. And she taught me very much. It's not what you don't know that'll trip you up. It's what you don't see that will trip you up. And so history is a piece of it, but observation for me is the single most important tool in assessing a lameness as a veterinarian. So next thing, once I've had a look and I've formed, I've noticed some things. I probably still haven't even opened my mouth at this stage. I'll go and have a bit of a feel, and zoning in on something that I might have noticed was an irregularity. So palpation is the next thing that I do when I'm assessing a lameness. Then it's manipulation. I want to pick the leg up. I want to feel it. I want to squeeze it. I want to flex it. I want to stick my fingers in it. I want to just see if I can elicit a pain response. And that's the go with what manipulation is. Next thing I'm going to do, I'm collecting data. And as you can appreciate, I've already collected a lot of data in my head, and I still probably haven't said anything during the course of the lameness exam because I haven't made up my mind yet. I want to observe this horse at the walk. Next thing I want to do is I want to trot this horse in hand. I want to trot it in a straight line. I want to observe it from the front. I want to observe it from the back, and I want to observe it from the side. And I also want to observe it on the lunge, commonly known as the circle of death. I'm sure we've all had pre-purchases that pass or fail, or been present for them, or tried to sell one or tried to buy, but the lunge is appropriately known as the circle of death. And I want to see this horse trot in hand on the lunge. And I'll give you, I've got some video coming up a little later to highlight what that actually means and what that actually does. And then occasionally, not often, I want to look at this horse under saddle. Some of the vet checks I've been involved in have gone for a couple of days. For very expensive horses. It's not often that we do this, but sometimes I'll have an owner complain to me that the horse, it's not right. It's okay, without having a saddle on, but when I ride it, it's no good. And so periodically I'll put the horse under saddle and do the same thing. Trot it up and down in a straight line, trot it in a circle in both directions. And that'll cross into a thing that we'll talk about a little later, but a thing called bridle lameness. And that's an important part of being a judge, assessing lameness in the show ring, a really important part. And then as a veterinarian, when I'm assessing my lame horse, once I work out where I think the lameness is, I then have all these tools at my disposal, nerve blocks, x-rays, ultrasound, blah, blah, blah. So what I want to do, so that's my process. When assessing a lame horse, it's presented to me regardless of endeavour, species, activity, doesn't matter. That's my process. Now, as judges, what have you got at your disposal in the show ring that overlaps with what we do as veterinarians? Well, yeah, you do have a history. I've got to get rid of this spray. You do have a history because that horse may or may not have come under your gaze in the past, and it may not or may not have been assessed, may or may not have been assessed as being lame by you previously. So you do have that history, but I do need to emphasise that every class should be classified as a new class. And I think as judges, history plays, I've got these in amber, green or red as to whether they apply, in my opinion. I've got this one as amber because, yeah, it does play history, and it may make you more aware of it, but my caution is to not let it cloud your judgment, and I'll come to that towards the end. Observation. You absolutely have the same powers of observation as veterinarians do. What do you see? Now, as judges, you have a lot on your plate. You've got to assess type, ridden classes, you've got to assess rider, you have to assess gait, you have a lot of things to consider. And if a class of 60 horses, it still impresses me greatly that invariably the answer you come to is pretty close to right almost all the time. But you have the same as we do as veterinarians. You have the power of observation. And I would encourage you to spend a little bit of time, not just looking at the horse and all the key things that I don't understand necessarily as judges, but take some time to have a look at the lower leg, see if you can see some obvious swellings, and not make a judgment on it, but just take note of it. As I said before, I just take note of it. I haven't said anything in my lameness exam. You just file that one away. Palpation you can't do. It's a statement of the obvious, so that one's in red, right? Manipulation, clearly not. At the walk, we're now assessing our horses at the walk, and in a lot of classes, we're on the ring to start with, and they walk around. Part of your assessment I'm encouraging you to do is get an impression of these horses at the walk, and when you bring them out into their individual workouts, part of your workout that you decide to set may be, I want to assess this horse at the walk. And we do the same thing, as I said before. That's how I assess a horse to start with. And you're still collecting information and data and forming an opinion. Trot in hand. And always in a lead class, these horses are going to be assessed at the trot in hand. But depending on what you want that person, that leader to do, you can set your workout. But from the ones that I've seen and been involved in, it involves both a straight line and a turn on the circle, sometimes in both directions, but invariably one way or the other. But it gets you to do exactly what we do as veterinarians. You know, you're looking at the green here, correlating to what we already do. Under saddle, you have the same facility as judges to assess the lameness. You have the opportunity, you know, to make that observation. And as I keep saying, you've got a lot going on in your mind, but the opportunity is there to add a lameness to your assessment of you know, whether that horse should be promoted or demoted in your mind's eye. And further diagnostics are not an option for you guys, of course. But you can see, comparing what I do as a veterinarian and what you do as judges, and the tools that you have at your disposal based on what happens in real life in the ring. You know, you got a really good opportunity once I give you a few tools coming through later on tonight to actually make a really good assessment. It can be done. So if anyone's got any questions, please feel free to fire away. Otherwise, I'll just keep chatting on.
Johnny, I'll just jump in. A couple of observations. The first dot point there for judges, you talked about every class is a new class. Now, we're all taught that as young judges, that, you know, you only judge what's in front of you and every class is a new class. So thanks for pointing that out or making that observation. It's pretty important. We've got about 15 to 20 level 1 judges here today. They're our newer judges. And again, I think a lot of us senior judges that have been around for a while, we've judged horses that have come in one class that it's been perfectly sound, and then 15 minutes later it'll come in, it'll be uneven or it'll be seriously lame. So yeah, thanks for making that point about judging every horse in every class as a new class. The only other question I had, Johnny, was about item 5, about the walk. This is more about judges trying to find a quality horse, but our standard of excellence talks about trying to find a horse with an overreach of about 30 centimetres. I know it's not related to this lameness test, but with your thoroughbreds and other horses that you generally look at, you know, how much importance do you place on that as an observational measurement, if you like?
So I'll address that. That's a very good question, and that's coming up. So I will. That's going to come up in both visual and video form. All right. Okay. So stand by. So all I'm doing at this stage is just saying, as vets, this is what I do, and as judges, this is what you have available. So it's a good question, and I'm coming to that. All right.
Okay.
Good man. All right. So and you've just addressed these two terms, Graham: lameness versus being uneven. I would like to encourage you to have the concept of the term lameness as opposed to uneven, because it's so much easier to conceptualize in real life. And when you're looking at a lameness, as opposed to a lot of the other things that judges do, which are very subjective and their own personal opinion, lameness should be able to be boiled down to an objective assessment if you consider adopting the tools that we're going to come to in the rest of this talk, okay? So Uneven for me in the ring doesn't cut it. I think that you should, in all of the other things that you consider in the ring when you think, is this horse lame or is this horse not lame? And I'll give you some clues, including overstep in a minute. I want you to think lameness. Don't think uneven, because if you think uneven, you're only going to confuse yourself. It is too subjective. I want you to think lameness, okay? The average workout in the ring is less than a minute, to be honest. So you don't have a lot of time, and you certainly can't go back and say, hey, shit, can I see that one again? You know, so once again, it keeps leaning you back to, I want objective assessments. I don't want subjective assessments. A true lameness will be consistent and repeated. An unevenness, which may not be a lameness and probably isn't at all, is neither consistent nor repeated. And it's really important that if you're going to judge a horse as lame, you want to be damn sure that it is, and it has to be consistent and it has to be repeated. You have the opportunity to assess these horses on the circle prior to an individual workout, if that's what the workout that you choose to give these horses, all right? And unless it's obviously lame, use that opportunity to form a concept that will direct your attention to that horse when you see it working out individually. I would caution you against being judgmental on the circle. I think for me, unless it's obviously lame, the stewards probably should be getting involved, but there are more important things to think about except to form a concept, right? I want to have a closer look at that horse as an individual because I think it looks, you know, it doesn't look quite right behind, but I want to use my tools to make an objective assessment, okay? So then we assess at rest, as we said before. Take note, take 15 seconds or 10 seconds to have a good look at their lower legs and see if there's an abnormality that may contribute to your overall impression of what's going on here. Stand behind the horse, have a look at it. Is it even behind? Is it symmetrical? Has it got even musculature? Is there another swelling or abnormality that I don't, that gives me some form of concern? We assess them from the side, same deal. Test them head on. And most judges that I've seen, you walk around your horse before you go and ask it to go and do something individual. But part of your overall assessment should be zeroing in. Don't forget, most of our lamenesses are coming from the knee or below or the hock or below. By actually making a conscious decision to actually look, it's very easy to sort of pretend to look, but if you actually look, you sometimes see a little bit more. Remember Gay Waterhouse, not what you know, it's not what you don't see. And then, of course, we assess our horses at the walk, and then sometimes the trot, then at the walk again. The canter, it's extremely difficult, if not impossible, to assess a lameness at the canter. There's too many moving parts. I could count on one hand the horses that I've diagnosed in 28 years at the canter as a lameness. It's a bad gait to be definitive about whether a horse is lame or not. Walk and trot are your lameness assessment gaits. And then importantly, if you're going to do that at the canter and you think your horse is not quite right, pay particular attention when it transitions down from canter to trot and also from trot to walk, but particularly from canter to trot, because the trot's the gait that we assess our lamenesses at. You've all been, as I say, you've all been to pre-purchases, you've all been to lameness examinations, World Cup events, watch them trot up and so forth. The trot is the gait, not the canter, but transitioning down is very useful in putting it in your tool of, your kit bag of tools that you're going to use to determine lameness or not. Okay, so there's a hand-led trot. Yes, that is me leading my thoroughbred stallion around. At the hand-led trot, most of you guys will know this, but I'm going to say it anyway. Head bob. The head goes down on the sound leg and it comes up on the saw leg. At the back end, at the back end, you can have a lameness that it is either a hip drop or a hip hike. So mostly speaking, if the horse is sore in the lower part of the leg, when that sore leg hits the ground, that hip's going to drop. If the horse is sore, stifle, or above, that hip is going to hike, and so which means go above the other hip. So when you're assessing hind limb lameness, you're looking for symmetry, and you have to determine, right, which leg is actually the even leg and which one's not, because a hind limb lameness is neither a drop nor a hike, where the front leg is always a drop for the lame leg. Drop for the sound leg. It could be either a hip hike or a hip drop. So when assessing the front leg is a lot easier than assessing the hind leg, but be aware that when you're looking at the front leg, head down on the sound leg, head up on the sore leg. Behind, you're looking at symmetry. Stride length, and this is where Graham came in before. In a straight line, both feet should overreach to the same extent, and it's a great clue as to whether or not that horse is genuinely lame, as to whether the overreach or the overstep is symmetrical. And it's this hind leg symmetry that I really want you guys to take home tonight. Now, if you're looking for a certain measurement, 30 centimetres or thereabouts, that's fine. But just make a point of looking at 2 or 3 strides and say, okay, is it the same each side? And if it's the same, it doesn't have to be 30 centimetres each side, but if it's the same, your horse is probably not, and it looks symmetrical from behind, your horse is probably not lame. Same, that's what I'm saying, as I was repeating myself there. So the overstep, if it's the same on both sides, your horse is probably not lame. And then once again, on pulling up from the trot to the walk, a horse may take a short step or two. Be convinced that it's repeatable and consistent before you make a judgment that one short step, did it stand in a pothole, for example, or did it get a fright from the side? So be objective, not subjective, and I think that will help a lot. Same thing on the turn, and I'll show you some video in a sec about assessing a horse on the trot at the turn, and I'll go through more detail on that in a sec. So here's a video of me looking at a horse. This horse actually won the Victoria Derby, believe it or not, and I looked at it, this is a couple of weeks ago now. So this is what we normally do in a lameness exam. Trot it up in a straight line on a firm surface, okay, and on a loose rein. And this is what we do in the show ring. We're already doing this. So part of what we do and you can see that horse is clearly not right in front. I'll just play one more time. Everybody's formed an opinion. I think it's lame in. It's clearly not right near 4, so that's okay. But what we do in our standard lameness exam is already part of what we do in the show ring and what you guys get to assess as judges. And he's a little bit sore near 4, that man there. So then we, as veterinarians, what we do is we assess these horses on the lunge. Now, I think the audio comes in a little bit later than the video here, so just depending on sorry, this is another one in a straight line. So this is a show pony, okay, and I got asked to look at this because the owner wasn't, happy with it. Have a good look at this horse because it's an interesting example. You get to see these horses in the show ring. Form an opinion as to whether you think this horse is sore and which leg it's sore in. Just have a look. I'll just give you that one again. Have another look at it. Just have a look at it and form an opinion in your own mind as to what you think, okay? And this is how I conduct my lameness exam. I'm just taking you through one of my exams. All right, so just hold your judgment. And so this is the next thing I will do, is I'll walk this horse on this hard surface in a very small circle. And what I'm looking for is its confidence to put its foot down. Does it hesitate? Does it pick it up? A lame horse will pick its foot up too quickly because it hurts to have it on the ground. So be aware of that. So the next thing we'll do is on the lunge, and I'll come back to that horse in a sec. So same deal. We're looking for a head bob, front leg, sound horse, head goes down. Sorry, sound leg, head goes down. Lame leg, head goes up. Same thing in the front. But you also get the opportunity to look at these symmetry from behind, and they should be symmetrical. On the circle, the inside is behind particularly is going to be lower than the outside. They have to get around the circle, but it should be symmetrical relative to that circle. Stride length, most important on the circle. It's natural that the outside leg on the circle has to travel further than the inside leg. And so it's no point assessing overstep on the circle. If you're going to assess overstep, it should be on the straight line. So if you're looking at a horse on the circle and you're looking for your objective parameters, which I'm trying to give you guys tonight, be forgiving about overstep on the circle, because the outside leg's got to travel further than the inside leg. And that's what I'm just saying again there. Outside, it'll probably step short compared to the inside just because of the physical distance that leg has to travel. And the other thing about the circle is that when we trot these horses or we lunge these horses on the circle, we're not only loading up the outside of the inside leg, we're also loading up the inside of the outside leg. So just conceptualize that for a second. A horse on a circle doesn't just load up the inside leg, it loads up the outside of the inside leg, but it also loads up the inside of the outside leg. And I've had many horses put them on the lunge. Here's a horse on the lunge to the left, he'll go lame in the right front leg because it's sore on the inside of that leg. And I'll show you some video in a sec about that. So here's our little horse that we looked at a minute ago. We haven't made up our mind yet. We're going to put this horse on the lunge. So just video's a little bit delayed here, but you'll see it in a sec. Ignore the audio because it doesn't keep up. But anyway, have a look and just make up your mind. We're going to go in both directions here. Tell me what you think about this horse. This is part of my lameness exam, every lameness exam. And I still haven't made up my mind yet because I haven't got all my data. And I encourage you guys to do the same thing, is until you get all the data. And as we said before, you have all these tools available to you in the show ring. I'd caution you against forming an opinion until you've actually got all your data. So keep watching this horse. So there it is. This particular little horse, before we go to the next video, this horse is sore in, if you were trying to work out which leg it was lame in, it's actually sore in both. And he had sore feet, this horse, and he looked uneven in both front feet on the straight line, and he certainly looked uneven in both feet, particularly the inside leg on the circle. So they don't have to be lame in one foot only, they can equally be sore in both, and that's where the circle comes into play, because you're loading up that leg. And Here's a video here of a horse on the lunge. Just have a look at its feet landing and appreciate the outside of the inside foot and the inside of the outside foot. So watch it go slow here. See where it lands there. You can appreciate that it loads up unevenly the foot. So you're basically splitting the foot in half when it comes to applying extra pressure to it. And this happens in the show ring. And you have this tool at your disposal. So you can appreciate there in slow-mo that the inside of the outside part of the foot and the outside of the inside part of the foot, they're the pieces that are being, loaded up, if you like, and an opportunity to assess a lameness and localise it even further. Have a look at it again here. Oops, sorry, I went slide too far. So we'll slow this one down even further. So slow it right down. Have a look at when these 2 feet land. You can see the outside foot doesn't quite get that overreach, but it's also landing on the inside of that. And the same on the other side. I'll just go back and play that again. And if you have a look at the outside of the inside legs, you can see that you're suddenly loading up or putting extra pressure on that part of the world. And that will give you, that's why we do the lunge, to try and localise that lameness even further. And then at the canter, same deal. It's a very difficult gait to assess a lameness at, as I say, but they don't land square when they're on the circle. They land asymmetrically, and it gives you a clue for us as lameness veterinarians and for you as judges that this is something that we can use as a tool. Bridle lameness, most important in my opinion in the show ring. What is it? Bridle lameness is real in a few circumstances only. Why? Extra weight loading up the front end can exacerbate front leg lameness. Uneven contact. You can create an apparent lameness through poor riding, basically, being blunt about it. But if you go back to the tools that we've discussed so far, symmetry, evenness, overstep, you can use that to either confirm or deny uneven contact as a cause of lameness. It's poor riding and uneven contact contributes to more bridle lameness than actual lameness, in my personal opinion. A horse anticipating a gait change, up or down, their head will move up and you think, well, is this horse lame or not? And that's not just poor riding, it's poor education that can contribute to it. As I said at the start, bridle lameness contributes a real lameness in a handful of cases. Invariably, it's training, rideability, or the ability to ride that gives you that impression when it's actually not real. And I'm trying to impress upon you to use some objective tools, not the subjective ones. So as I say, use your clues. Has it got an even stride length? Has it got an even overstep? Is there a consistent, repeatable head bob? And when you look at the horse from behind, is it symmetrical? And then you can go on even further if you like. Is the rider sitting even? Is the saddle put on straight? Bridle lameness, it contributes to a real lameness occasionally. Invariably, there's other stuff going on, and then you as judges can determine whether to mark them down or not. But be cautious of trying to find a lame horse under saddle that may actually not be lame, because it happens, but it doesn't happen that often. And as I say, consistency is the key. Is its gait consistent? Is it symmetrical? What surface is it on? Are we cantering around the MCG, or are we in the middle of, the Youngaborough showgrounds? And then, of course, you've got distractions affecting what the horse does with its head and how it moves and so forth. So when it comes to bridle lameness, it's real for sure in a handful of situations. But my suggestion to you guys as judges is you want to be convinced based on some objective clues that it's bridle lame before you mark it down as being bridle lame. It's real for sure, but be objective about it. So here's a little bit of an example of that. Here's a horse. It's out in the middle of the ring warming up. And just have a look at how he carries himself, this horse. And focus on his front end, but focus on his legs and do what you're going to do in the ring in real terms. So his head's bobbing up and down, right? And the rider's doing her best to keep him in the frame. But his legs are symmetrical and his overstep is even. And if you look at him from behind, he's cantering off to the side there, trotting off the side there a little bit, but he's symmetrical in his gait. So what you see as an impression with his head going up and down is not a lameness. This horse is not lame. Use your objective clues. Look down, not necessarily look up. And as you can see here now, he's anticipating going into the next gate, but his head's calmed down a little bit. And he's got a lot of distractions going on behind him and so forth. He's anticipating transition up. We need to be forgiving of that before we condemn these horses as having a true lameness. But I encourage you to focus on the legs rather than the horse itself, unless, of course, the lameness is obvious. Same horse, different show. And once again, we've got bandages on this horse. So it's going to be a little bit easier to see. But you'll see here, he's obviously a little bit ahead of the bridle there. Is he lame? Is he not? If you focus on the head, you can be distracted by this lameness that's not real. If you have a look and his white bandages are the same, gait even, overstep even, symmetry from behind even. And so if you think a horse is lame, and the canter's not a great gait to do that, we'll come back to the trot here in a sec. There we go. And he's still looking to go, just go back there a little bit. He's still looking to grab the bit a little bit. So his head's coming up and down, and this is not a sore horse. This is a sound horse. But if you have a look there at the trot, even overstep, head going up and down because he wants to get back into his canter again. You've used an objective assessment to determine, or help you to determine whether this horse is lame in the show ring or not. Right, so we're coming to the end of it. What are we actually looking for? Lame at the walk, stewards get involved, right? Horse shouldn't even be presented to you. Observation at rest. Use the time when you're inspecting the individual to take note of things that you might pay closer attention to further down your assessment, okay? Head bob in front. Horse comes down on its sound leg, comes up on its sore leg. Very straightforward. Behind, different story. They can hike the hip or they can drop the hip, okay? You're looking for symmetry behind. They have to be even behind. And then stride length, particularly in a straight line, as you saw on those lunge videos. You have to forgive the outside leg on the circle for overstep. If you're going to assess stride length, please do it in a straight line. And a consistent and even overstep in a straight line, as I said to you just now, compared to being on the circle. Forgive the surface, forgive the rider, bridle lameness, forgive distractions such as the Ferris wheel in the background. Okay, use your objective clues before you determine whether one is lame or not in the show ring. And also use this transition down, particularly from canter to trot, because that's the gait that, as I said before, that's the gait that we use to determine lameness in vet world. So that's an important one, but also transition down from trot to walk. But the key one is transition down from canter to trot. And the key take home here is that true lameness will be consistent and it will be repeatable. So let's put it all together. Let's have a look at what happens in the ring. This is a thoroughbred, but it happens in Arab world as well. So Judges are assessing this horse. He's a bit of a fidget, but you've had the opportunity to look at him at rest. We're now looking at him at the walk, and now we're going to get to look at him at the trot. So you're looking at, apart from all the other things you're looking at, right, whether you like the horse or not, you can see stride length, you can see symmetry, you can see a head bob. Hopefully you don't see that, particularly on this surface. And then across in front, same deal. You can assess symmetry behind, you can assess a head bob in front, you can assess even stride length, you can assess overreach. And then, and this is why I like this workout, because you get to look at it from behind, from the side, and you get to look at it from in front. And you can look at head bob here, you get to see stride length. Apart from all the other things, as I keep saying, you're trying to assess type and temperament and condition and all those sorts of things. There you go. You've basically conducted your own lameness exam the same way that we as vets would do. So you've got a lot of moving parts sometimes in the Arab show world, and if you've got all of this happening, then you can be easily distracted from lameness. You've got a lot of other things to judge, and lameness is only part of it, but it is an important part. But if you take some of those objective keys that you hopefully take home tonight, then you'll be in a better position to be able to ignore distractions such as this. So, final key points. Do not form a subjective opinion, all right? Get some ideas in your head, but then apply your objective clues. Do not carry your opinion class to class or even day to day. You don't know that the horse had a sore foot. You don't know that it had a pressing nail or a foot abscess that they managed to drain or a bruise, they reset the shoe. You don't know that. So don't carry that perception from class to class or even day to day. You might have got cast the night before, you know, or it tied up because it's way too fat and doesn't enough exercise. So be forgiving with respect to that and treat every class and every day as a brand new event. And in order to do that and ignore distractions and false lamenesses, make sure you use your objective tools. And so if you've paid attention, then I'm going to ask you to all submit to me in writing your assessment of the following 7 horses, because it should be easy after what we've just been through. Whoops, sorry. And anybody who's been to Bathurst Royal will know exactly what I'm talking about. So good luck with all of that. Anyway, it's all a bit of fun. So there it is. If anyone's got any questions, I'm happy to take them. Or Graham, if we're running out of time, they can. Yeah,
we've got plenty of time for questions, Johnny. I might ask you just to drop the screen down if you could, because I can't actually see if anyone is actually asking questions at the moment. So. Okay. Yeah, so I'd encourage anyone, if they'd like to ask a question, now's the time to do it. While they're just thinking about that, Johnny, I just wanted to, I sent you a copy of our rule book and the definition of lameness. Now, you may not recall it, or you may not have it in front of you.
I don't have it in front of me, but I know you sent it to me, but yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, just a couple of questions with the way we've worded our rule. We talk about horses exhibiting signs of serious lameness in the opinion of the judge.
Yep.
Now, it's just the definition of serious. And what you've been saying is, try and be forgiving of, different circumstances. So I guess I just want to find out whether we should just be calling it lameness and whether you have degrees, whether you think the judges are qualified enough to categorise it as, mild, medium or serious, if you know what I mean.
Sure. My personal opinion in that respect is that you need to form an objective opinion based on objective parameters as to whether a horse is lame or it is not. And I think that a serious lameness probably shouldn't be in the ring to begin with. And it might get spun on the first go round, out you go. You've got the gate, but the word serious for me is it's a horse that's lame at the walk. I think in the ring, if you are objectively assess a horse as being lame, then I think that horse probably deserves to be marked down. But I think that making that assessment should be taken with a great deal of caution because of all of the other compounding factors that we've just seen: bridle lameness, distractions, uneven surface, being on the circle, the overstep, stride length, etc. I think that lameness, serious lameness, horse shouldn't probably be there. Lameness, I would reserve my assessment of that as just to use the term lameness, but that lameness has to be based on some objective parameter.
Yeah, okay. Thanks for that, Johnny. Look, Helen's just advised me that we've got a chat question, but Helen, it's just not coming up on my screen. It doesn't actually...
Oh, okay. The question was, Johnny, do you look for the V in a trot?
The V, please explain.
Debbie?
Yes, that would be me. But as soon as I typed that, then you answered my question because you look for overtrack.
Yeah.
So as a dressage judge, we look for the V, which is the hind footfall covering the front footfall.
Yeah.
And we just call it a V. That's all.
Yeah, that's
it's
it.
just a simple terminology.
If you want as judges,
then you cover that, and that's when you look at the V, the hind leg meeting the front leg, the foreleg. If you can see a clear V, then usually it is overtracking. If you don't see a V, then the hind end is separate to the front end, and there's something going on then.
I think it's a good question. So all horses are different, and some overtrack and some don't. Some are undertrack. But the little pony was showing a V on one set of legs, and the other diagonal wasn't quite meeting, wasn't it? That's right.
Yeah. So that was my point, to use a V, but then you covered it anyway. So yeah, thank you.
That's it. It's about comparing one side to the other. So don't expect all horses to have like an overstep of 30 centimetres. It's just not going to happen, right? And if that's a markdown in your judging,
degree of education as well.
Correct. But compare left to right, compare it on the right to the left, compare it in a straight line.
Yeah.
It's not lame if it's the same both sides. If it's different both sides, then you probably do have a lameness. So you've got to compare apples with apples before you call it a lameness, and give the horse the opportunity to prove that it's sound before you condemn it for being lame, and have an objective measurement. And that's a very good
your point 3 was really good. It has to be consistent all the time.
Yeah.
But in our world, with the Arabian judges, we've used different terminology over the years as well. We've been avoiding using the word lameness, so not to put ourselves in a corner, and be a little bit more diplomatic with some of the competitors. So we kind of use uneven a lot and irregular a lot, those two words a fair amount.
Good point. My personal opinion is I actually think it's making it harder for yourself because it's so much harder to quantify. It becomes a subjective assessment, whereas you can say, no, I thought your horse was lame because its overstep on the left in a straight line was less than its overstep on the right. Or I thought your horse was lame because it was definitely not symmetrical at the trot. Or I thought your horse was lame because it definitely had a consistent head bob despite the bridle contact. Whereas if you're avoiding, I think it's and it goes to Graham's question a little bit earlier before, I would, a horse is either lame or it's not. Serious lameness, I'm not convinced helps at all. And I think using vague terms such as uneven or inconsistent, they're very hard to quantify, and they're very hard to therefore justify your decision. Whereas
I will say some irregular steps That's what
Yeah.
we'll say
That's right.
in a dressage test, you know, rather than saying outright, we saw lameness.
Well, you can
Even
say
though we
they
did,
can-
we'll say some irregular steps,
Well,
because sometimes it is, you know, not always there, like you say, you know.
Well, exactly right. But you can say, in my opinion, that horse was consistently irregular. It was repeatedly irregular. And that's what Graham said before. They're two very, very important words that for me as a lameness assessor, is it consistent? Is it repeatable? Well, if it is, then you've got a problem. And so you don't have to, you know, say blatantly lame. You can say it was consistently irregular. It was repeatedly irregular. And they may be terms that you decide to adopt.
Yeah, that sounds heaps. Yeah, that sounds good.
Consistent, repeatable. That's what lameness is.
Thanks, Deb. Really good questions. And thanks, Johnny, for your answers. Johnny, look, another thing that I was just thinking again about our rule on lameness, and this is written in bold, when it says it's an animal welfare issue. This is about the possibility of taking a horse out of the class because you believe it's lame. Can you just run through from a vet's perspective? We've talked about head bobbing and things like that, but what are the clinical signs of a horse that's in pain? Because part of our rule talks about that seriously lame is a horse that consistently exhibits signs of pain in the opinion of the judge. Now, this is another one that I've just got a question mark over about a judge determining what pain is. Now, I think the rule means head bobbing or unevenness of stride, but can you just run us through what you would think the pain thresholds are for horses, or the definitions are, as we've been talking about tonight?
Okay, so the horse exhibits signs of lameness because it's in pain. Bottom line, it's only head bobbing, it's only uneven, it's only got a short stride length compared to the other side because it's in pain. So, in my opinion, a horse that is able to be objectively assessed as being in pain should not be allowed to compete, I think. And that's my personal opinion. To present a horse that has an objective means of being measured as lame is exactly the same. It's only lame because it's in pain. Those two words in that rule are interchangeable in my mind, and that horse should be not allowed to compete. But you've got to use an objective assessment rather than poor ridership, uneven surface, distractions, all those other things that we spoke about and that you saw in the video. You want to be damn sure that it is lame before you call it in pain. But the two terms are definitely interchangeable. You know, lameness and pain, that is why it's lame, because it's in pain.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Johnny. That's great.
Does that answer the question or not?
Yeah, it's like it's a circular discussion, Johnny. But yeah, no, that's been great. You have answered it. Thank you. It's a hard one. I'm just mindful. I just want to make sure that we're giving our judges the correct advice through the rule book. And as I said, it's you can read some rules in lots of different ways. And I just wanted to, you know, while we had you here tonight, I just wanted to run a few of those things past you.
Yeah. Be objective, be consistent, be repeatable, and then call it lame. And if you got to that point, then you can justify from a welfare point of view to the outside world. Our judges have been trained to make sure that these horses are allowed to compete if we're concerned about their welfare. But you know, you want to be certain about your assessment before you make that call. Would be my advice.
Yeah. Okay. Johnny, look, probably I can't see any more questions. Oh, yeah, we've got one question here. Just trying to see who that's from. Michael Green. Michael, do you want to unmute yourself and come on board, Michael?
Yeah, that's it.
Thanks, John. It's been very informative, but one problem that in the show ring, there's very clever handlers
Yeah.
that can mask a problem. And one of the biggest problems with judging how we've been brought up over time is lameness sometimes, or unevenness is easier to be overlooked than us to actually bring it to anybody's attention.
Yeah.
And you've nailed it before about asking people to, bringing it to the spectators' awareness why you've actually asked somebody to run out again and come back to you.
Yeah. Good.
But I'd like for you to, as a vet, I've been in a couple of instances where only my personal opinion, horses have been masked, like drugged.
Okay.
How would you, with younger judges, what would you tell them? I know now, after asking questions, what do they look for? Droopy eyes, pizza hanging out. That, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I get it. I understand what you're saying. So it's a two-part question. It's actually a very good question, and it's sort of straying into not the brief of this, but if Graham's happy for me to touch on the second part of his question, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So the first part of the question is I've been to dozens and dozens of FEI trot-ups where I've been the FEI veterinary delegate, dressage, eventing, jumping, doesn't matter. And what Michael's saying is absolutely correct, is that the handlers are very clever and they practice. Don't worry, they practice. And I've owned FEI level animals and they haven't always been 100% right, but yeah, they do. So I have no issues and I have no fear or favour. If I'm not happy with the trot up that's presented to me at an FEI level, I will absolutely ask that person to go again. And I've even been to the point where you sort of run out of time, you run into logistics and so forth. So I'm not happy with that horse, and I'm going to ask you to present that horse again tomorrow morning, because it's just not. I just can't get a guide on that horse. And sometimes that's the rider deliberately being, hopeless. Sometimes it's the rider choking the horse's head down so it can't bob up and down. Sometimes they go too slow. Sometimes they go too fast. I honestly believe that you are well within your right, and I certainly exercise this right myself as an FEI veterinary delegate. If I'm not happy with that workout, I want to see it done properly. And I think that in the ring, that's part of your assessment. And if you have a concern over whether the horse has a lameness and whether you think the handler is trying to describe it, I absolutely believe that you are entitled to say, trot it out on a loose lead, please. Don't choke it down so that I can't see it, etc. And if it fails to behave, then that may be one of the criteria that you use to maybe not favour that horse. But I think you absolutely do within your rights to ask for a repeat workout. And you are absolutely, because I do it all the time at FEI level, you are absolutely within your rights to ask for that. For the younger judges listening, sorry, does that answer the first part of your question,
Yeah.
Michael?
Yeah, that's great.
Okay. And I would support people doing that. I would look at that again. I want to see that again. I've got no issues with wanting to see that again. You saw me with that chestnut horse before. Yeah. I want to see that again. No issues. And I don't know that it breaches any rules. Second part of your question, with respect to, do you think this horse is under some form of medication? Well, pain relief, it's not going to affect its behaviour other than make it sound. And that's something for the organising committee or the chief judge to determine whether a horse should or should not be swabbed. But if you're concerned that a horse may or may not be sedated, a couple of clues. How does a horse behave differently in two classes that are half an hour apart? If it's been a complete, difficult animal in one class and 30 minutes later it's as quiet as a lamb, question mark. Sweating is another clue to a horse having been potentially sedated. Droopy eyelids for sure. And then also the sheath hanging out. Be careful with stallions because they're always thinking about the mare in front. You don't know whether they've had Vicks put up their nose. Time of the year, middle of winter in Bathurst versus, autumn at Sydney Royal. Be careful of that. But dropping the sheath out in a gelding and it's staying out is a clue. I think, as I said to you before, I think in stallions, I would ignore very much what they do with their penis. But they are. I've got two of them, and I show them both, and they are different. Don't worry. And then the other thing, if a horse is actually properly sedated, it's not going to stand square. It's going to consistently rest a hind leg, and it's going to just pop a knee forward slightly. So if you're looking for keys to sedation, difference between classes in a short space of time in behaviour, droopy eyelids, sweating, sheath drop in a gelding, resting a hind leg far too consistently, and maybe popping a knee. Those 5 clues. Does that answer your question, Michael?
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's fantastic. Thanks, John.
Okay, look, thanks, John. I think we don't have any more questions from what I can see. So look, I wanted to, well, first of all, thank Michael and thank Deborah for your questions. But Johnny, thank you for your insights tonight. I think all the judges will appreciate that you are a competitor, that you're out there in the show ring, but gosh, you've got a wealth of experience as a vet, as an FEI vet. And you've brought that to us tonight. You've given us some real practical examples and practical tools of what we can do and use as judges. So look, thank you very much for that. We appreciate your time tonight. I'll give you a call tomorrow. We've got a bottle of something nice for you coming your way. But on behalf of the Arabian Horse Society, I know it's I'm not sure whether you've done one of these before for Arabian horses, but at the end of the day, they're all horses. We all love them. And your passion came through tonight as well, Johnny. We just loved having you on board. So thank you once again for your time, Johnny.
Pleasure, mate. And if anyone's got any questions, either send me or you an email, and I'll happily respond, phone, call, email, whatever. Anyone got any questions, just feel free to sing out.
Okay. Thanks, Johnny. Really appreciate that.
Pleasure, gang.
Have a
Okay.
good night. Thank you. Be safe.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Right. Lisa, I'll just ask you to come on board if you can unmute. And
okay, sorry about that. I did try.
no, sorry, Lisa Stevens, not you, Lisa Block. Sorry, Lisa
Sorry,
Stevens.
my apology.
That's okay. It's a good name. Hi, Lisa. We got you there.
Yes, you've got me here.
Okay, right. Well, look, everyone, it now gives me great pleasure to welcome Lisa Stevens. Lisa is the principal consultant and founder of Racing Mind, a high-performance consulting firm. Lisa's many formal qualifications and her career are centred around psychology, where she has obtained her master's. However, before becoming a psychologist, Lisa was a professional show jumping rider, travelling nationally and internationally in that role, and also as a coach. Of particular note, she was the Australian Women's Champion show jumping rider in 1987. Now, Lisa's CV is just jaw-dropping. She's had a lot of experience assisting individuals and teams as a sports psychologist, Some of these include the Victorian Institute of Sport, Swimming Australia, the Paralympic Equestrian Team, Women's Artistic Gymnastics, and a number of football clubs, including Geelong, Carlton, and currently she's the Western Bulldogs team psychologist. In regard to horse-related activities, one of the strong suits to Lisa's CV is that she partnered and provided assistance to the Victorian Government, Racing Victoria, with the Jockeys Assistance Program. And this is to provide a number of mental health services to Victorian jockeys and their families. Now, this work has been widely acclaimed and has grown and developed over a number of years. Look, I've only touched on some of Lisa's qualifications and experiences, but I'm sure you'll appreciate that she will have much to offer to you tonight, our Arabian judges, in her seminar talk. Now, tonight she's going to be talking about judging our Arabian horses and how you as an individual can perform under pressure. So welcome, Lisa, and once again, thank you for taking the time to be with us tonight. I know you're very busy. I know you've got a lot on your plate, but thank you again for coming along tonight.
It's my pleasure, Graham. It's nice to see you all, and I quite enjoyed seeing Johnny Walker's presentation as well, which we can actually draw on within the presentation that I'm going to give you all, and hopefully you won't all be asleep by the end of it. I think I'm sort of sometimes funny, sometimes not, but I'll do my best given that you're all locked up. And I'm very aware that a lot of the things I'm going to talk about could be quite handy living in the time of COVID for those who are all locked up like we are in Melbourne. I'll just do a share screen. Give me 2 seconds. Can everyone see that?
It's just coming up. Yeah, now it's up.
Okay,
yeah.
So now, I don't know whether this is good Arabian or not, but I did look for one that was, from the 80s, so that sort of my era, so that I didn't offend anybody whose horse it wasn't. And I do believe it's an American horse. I think one of the most important things for us to think about when we're talking about performance under pressure is what the aims are. So if we look at your aim is to handle all situations in an efficient, professional, and where possible, it's not always possible, where possible, friendly manner. And the summary of characteristics that I see in judges, and I've been a judge, which, Royal Melbourne and what have you, and, I know it's actually quite a challenging thing, particularly when you know some of the people that you're actually judging. And so some of the key characteristics are being courteous, honest, impartial, good role model. So that means, you've got competence, you've got commitment, and you've got character, being able to try and avoid conflicts of interest. And that's really difficult in the horse world because often you've sold people horses. I don't know what the rules are with Arabians, but it's pretty hard not to bump into the same people, particularly over long careers, at repeated times. We've got to be ethical, we've got to be accountable, and we've got to be, above all, knowledgeable. And so that's what you all are. That's what you all aim to be. And what we've got to look at is what would make somebody with all of those characteristics, what would put pressure on their performance to be able to be all of those things? I mean, a good person. What would make a good person find those things difficult? And that's when we come to looking at performance. Now, all performance, the actual pressure comes from expectations from yourself and from others, scrutiny. Everyone's watching what you're doing and they've all got an opinion. And now they've got social media, which is even more marvellous. There are often consequences to the decisions you make, particularly for the competitors. And living in the land of COVID, uncertainty is on steroids at the moment. So all of these things are things that are sent to try us. Now, this is not bad. This level of energy is not bad. Often it enables us to be really sharp when you've got a big day and you've got to get through a lot of horses and you've got to be making quite fast decisions. But we need to have a plan so that we don't actually get into a cycle of being overwhelmed or diverted from our task. And it's very easy, particularly if somebody has a go at you or something, it's very easy to get diverted, and then it can muck up the process, and then you get upset with yourself because you might make a rookie error because of being under pressure for some reason. The other thing to remember is everyone that's coming into your class and being judged by you is under the same sort of performance pressure. So it means that they may not necessarily be as pleasant as they might normally be. And your job as the professional is to be able to handle that situation in a really professional manner. And I want to take some time just to explain about what I mean when I say about what can happen to your brain. So under performance pressure, and can you all see that screen pretty well?
Yeah, I think so, Lisa. Yeah.
Everyone can see it? Okay. So I like to break it into really simple terms. Now, and I say about being in red brain or blue brain. Red brain is when we get distracted. We can have inaccurate perception. We can have negative looping going on in our mind where we've got all the shoulds and the have tos and all those sorts of thoughts happening. We can become a bit overloaded or a bit overwhelmed. We can tend to go a bit past future. And Johnny made a good point that we really want to be in the moment when we're judging a horse. We don't want to be thinking about how, you know, the breeder of that horse is our arch enemy or our best friend. We want to be in the moment when we're judging. We also don't want to be reactive. We don't want to focus on the things we can't control. And when we go into red brain, I'll explain this further in a minute, that's the sort of thing that happens. We can really be distracted. Now, to explain the red and the blue brain, I want to give you a little neuroscience lesson. We've actually got three brains all trying to interact with each other at the same time. So if you imagine, I'm going to use my hand as an example. So imagine this part of your brain, your brainstem, right? Call that number one, right? Reptilian brain, first one to develop, fully developed when you're born. Bring your thumb over, that's your what we call the limbic system or your mammalian brain, right? Fully developed but not programmed when you're born. And then we get the last part of your brain to develop, which is the smart brain. This is the one you want to use for judging. And so you imagine that's how it is. Then if you go into red brain, and this is actually what happens to your brain, you basically flip your lid, right? You go into more of a survival mode, right? And now you're not working on your smart brain. Your smart brain, it leaves the building, okay? Now, when you're judging, you want the smart brain on, not off. And the thing is normal people have lid flipping moments, and they've got to be able to recognize when that happens and get them back on. Otherwise, you're not going to be rational. And you want to be as rational as you possibly can be when judging. And you've got a lot of pressures on you, and there's plenty of lid flipping opportunities. And so when I talk about, you know, from a neural point of view, we don't want you on survival mode. We don't want you having the whole lion fighting equipment turning up in the middle of a judging class, because you will miss some of Johnny's, you know, you might miss the lame horse. You might start overthinking, thinking about the past, thinking about the future. So we really want to be able to have a strategy for keeping the lid on so that you can actually be over in blue brain, which is where you have accurate perception, you're task focused, you're responsive, you're present, and you're focused on what you can control, what you not and can influence, not what you can't control. So I'll give you an example of why we've got a design issue. We actually developed this brain on the savannas of Africa when it was very important to be able to flip our lids if we were in the presence of a lion or some other creature that was going to eat us. Because it's very handy to have a system that either has us freeze, run away, or kill the lion, right? Very, very useful for lions, but there aren't many around, you know, in current days. So we don't really want to use that equipment. Because you imagine if you've got your slow, good old rational brain going, oh, it's about 3 foot tall, it's a yellowy colour, it's got big teeth, you're probably going to get eaten. And I've got to tell you, we've got a long history of evolution that says, you know, the caveman that came out of the cave and said, heard a rustling in the bushes and said, she'll be right, probably didn't survive. So we've got a long history that we have to deal with. This is the same brain that we had on the savannas of Africa, and we've got to be able to have it, be able to understand when it's needed, right? You know, lines coming out, etc., and when we've actually got the lid back on, and that's going to be the most effective. And I've got a cat about to join us. I can just hear she's woken up and she started squeaking, and she'll probably come and join us all because she's on her way. So I'll apologise.
That's okay.
For my pound cat turning up. Her name's Precious. I'll just push Precious away. And as you know, cats are really good at doing what they're told, so it's going to work well. So that gives you an idea of what's actually happening upstairs. And I think you will have all had moments when you will have had flippy lids. Number one, you all live in families, so Christmas time, probably you've noticed a little bit of that action. And look, it doesn't take much to flip the lid. But if you can recognise, right, first step, recognise when you're on that roundabout. Second, have a strategy for being able to ground and reset so you can go back to being task focused. But these are the sort of things you have to have. You have to know them well so that you can use them under pressure. If you don't practice them at other times, don't expect them to turn up, you know, at the right moment. It's like getting lost in the forest. It's good to have a Google map to get out and not just run around in circles. So we'll keep coming back to this principle of keeping the lid on. And in the times of COVID, I'm sure there are many people who are not being able to use their normal strategies to be able to have lids on, which means that you're going to be a little bit more vulnerable. And when I'm, you know, dealing with people that are used to being out and about and they're like little cage tigers, we're having to work on getting the lid back on quite frequently. The other part to this is that if you notice a lid flipping and you try and talk to yourself and you say, it's okay, Lucy, just settle down. And the other part of my brain goes, yeah, but what if, blah, 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 right? And I get into a fight. That means I've gone past the point of being able to use what we call a top down, where I can talk myself down. I've actually got to do something physical at that point. I've got to either breathe or tighten and loosen my muscles. I've got to have a strategy to be able to do that grounding, to be able to come back to my map, to my task focus. I've got to be able to actually ground myself. Now, as a rider, and most of you, I'm sure, are riders, when you're on young horses, right, and they start bouncing around the place, the worst thing in the world that you can do is the most natural thing for a normal human being is where you grab, curl, and get tight. I've got to tell you, if I see somebody do that at track work or something, I'm almost, you know, putting my hands over my face because I know it is not going to go well. And most people that ride young, you know, ridden young horses and ridden breakers and things will know that you have to have a strategy. You've got to get heavier, so your centre of gravity down. You've got to loosen up, and usually it's forward and straight, forward and straight, forward and straight, forward and straight. And that's the safest thing to do. So most of you, you're riders, you're horse people. You know how to do that already. And I know when I'm in a meeting, you know, at the footy club, and I have a different opinion maybe than some of the other people there, and I'm usually the only female, I've got to tell you, I'll just use young horse body, right? Just drop my centre of gravity, I loosen up, and that means I can stay sane with my lid on while all around me are flipping their lids because something's gone wrong and we lost when we should have won, or whatever it is. And it's really, really useful to have that strategy where you can actually be the calm person in the room. Because you imagine you've got somebody, you already know their lid's off, and maybe they're a competitor, maybe they're a parent coming out to tell you, you know, how crap you are, whatever it is, and your lid's off, their lid's off, don't join them. This is not safe. That'd be like joining a horse that's going off by flipping your lid. Not good, you know. And I often think about people in the same way as I do about horses. In fact, I use it as one of my strategies when I'm talking to, you know, maybe an apprentice that didn't ride so well, and maybe, just maybe, a horse trainer may have flipped their lid, you know, and I say, they're just like a chestnut filly, you know. They're just pulling back. They're going to flip themselves over, you know, just step back and wait till they settle. Nothing else you can do. What you can't do is flip your lid and expect it to go well. We're actually Bluetooth to other humans. So if we can actually keep our lid on when everyone else is flipping their lids, that is the safest thing that you can do. I remember a situation at a particular track. I was called down. Some things had gone wrong down there. And we were interviewing people, checking how they were. And the CEO was sitting next to me, and I was sitting at the head of the table. And person after person was coming in, and we were talking to them. And this one guy said, the next guy, he didn't have a problem with what went on. So I'm thinking, that's good. That's a bit of a change. Anyway, he's come in. Well, I tell you, he was tighter than a tick. I thought he was going to have a heart attack. He was red in the face, and he was just so tight. And I thought, this is going to be interesting, because his lid was way off. So rather than, you know, and he was sort of, you know, spitting and spluttering and obviously not a happy camper. Now, what I recognised was this person is telling me, not happy, Jan, right? Not happy. So I immediately did my young horse, put my lid on, made sure that it didn't go off, even though it gave me a bit of a startle. And I said to him, you look a bit, you know, you look pretty upset. And of course he went, I'm not upset. And I said, well, you're tighter than a tick. I'm worried you're going to bust a footer. And at that point, he sort of noticed that his body was really tight and he was about to bust a footer. And he just quietly got his little lid back on and felt a bit safer and was able to talk. And you know, no one got punched, no one got hurt, and it was a good outcome. And in that situation, I probably think about it when people are gone off their heads. I think about them a lot like feral kittens. So you know, when you go to a stable and you go to pat kitty, and it goes at you, you know, and you go, it's scared. We're very good with horses and dogs and cats and things to know why, you know, that it might be responding because it's scared or upset. We're not so good with humans. Often we'll say, for good's sake, don't get, you know, keep your lid on or whatever, which is not helpful because they'll just escalate until you've noticed what they're showing you. Now, anger is actually a secondary emotion to fear, frustration or hurt. If you've criticised someone's horse, they're probably going to be frustrated and hurt. You know, so they might show you anger. Again, best thing you can do, lid on. This is the safest thing you can do. Same as on a young horse, same thing. Now, I know with the horses it's easier because we don't take things as personally. However, if we could do that with humans, we'd find it a lot easier. So if we think about it, we've looked at it, we've gone, okay, we've got to recognise when our lid's off. Probably good to recognise when other people's lids are off, gives you a little bit of a guide as well. Then we've got to have a way to ground ourselves. As I say, I use young horse, you know, and maybe as we're sitting here, a really simple thing to do is just press down, okay? Press down your feet, press down your hands on your desk. And I want you to press down as hard as you can, all of you, even if you're pressing down on your legs. And when I say let go, let go. And see what that feels like. We've increased tension. Then when we let go, we feel a bit more relaxed. Now, if you're out judging and you're feeling a bit uptight, you can just press your feet down or you can shrug and let your body go. You just, same as you would on a horse, tighten and loosen your muscles, get your centre of gravity low again. Do a big breathe out. horse people know, you can even do it like a horse. I don't mind, but that'll help you get your lid back on. Then we've got to look at making sure that we're not getting stuck on what we can't control. Okay? I use Melbourne weather all the time in this example. I can't control Melbourne weather. I can influence how cold I get by putting on a sweater or a raincoat or something. I can't control the competitors around me or whether the nice horses are brought out or not nice horses are brought out, but I can influence how professional I am. And usually that's because I'll have a map and I'll have a way of moving from recognizing, if I'm stuck here, grounding, steadying, moving back onto what can I influence, and then using what I can control. Being task focused, and Johnny was terrific with this because he gave you a system for looking at how to a task focus for assessing lameness. Observation, walk, in the trot, in hand, on a circle. And so he gave you a nice template under pressure to go through so you can make an objective assessment. I think we all should have a self-audit process, have a system to go through. Know what you like, what do you like in conformation and movement, and know why those things are your priority list, and also what are the deal breakers. I happen to really love great throats. I love great front ends. I might even forgive something behind a little bit because I love a front end, but someone else might really be hard on a back end. Now, that's a personal preference. As long as they're basically correct, you start getting into preference decisions then. Follow your system, have your decisions based on the priority and be able to just go through them so you don't miss anything. And then we do a review and we might consult someone and we have just a constant improvement in the way we judge. There's no possibility that you won't have regrets when you're a first-time judge. You will have regrets at times as you learn. Really seek progression. There's an old horse saying, seek progression, not perfection, and you'll generally improve. But have a process of constant improvement that you can use. Now, sometimes you have difficult situations, and at Royal Melbourne one year, I had somebody come into the ring, very high-profile person, and first round was absolutely bang on. And I thought, well, that's going to be easy because, that was just a cracker. Unfortunately, they then came back for the second round, and I'm afraid it wasn't so good. And I knew the person really well. I have really high regard for them. They're a really top rider. However, the second round just had issues. It wasn't made easier by the fact that when they were all lined up, ready to be, given their rosettes, this person had assumed because they are wonderful that they would have won, and so they stepped forward. And I had to actually say to this person I knew very well and who was very famous, no, sorry, dear, it's not you. And it was horrible. But the thing is, I needed to be objective and I needed to judge what I saw in front of me, not what I knew about whether they could jump World Cup, but I had to judge what was in front of me. Now, I do remember that probably Royal Melbourne September, World Cup in Canberra would have been Australia Day. So there's a little bit of a gap in between those times. And I walked into the truck and there's the judging sheet that I'd done in September sitting on the kitchen bench in the truck. And I thought, I thought to myself. And but the thing is I absolutely knew why I'd marked the way I had. And in fact, she was actually riding a horse of mine, and it was after I was injured. And she'd actually had a rail down in front with that particular horse because of the particular fault that I'd picked up in my judging of of that. So, you know, I just stayed really calm and just said, well, look, this is what I see. You know, you don't do it over metre 60 fences, but you did do it here. And what could I do? We still remain friends, and I still don't think she liked losing at all. But at least I had an audit process that I was able to explain why, and I could be true to myself. Would have been much easier to be not objective and not fair to the rest of the class to make sure that she didn't front me 5 months later. But that would have been wrong. You know, that's not the right decision to make. So it's really important, in the same way as Johnny said, observe and go to have an audit, have what you like. Another situation that put me under a little bit of pressure was some years ago. It was a Group 1 race over at Caulfield, and one of the jockeys was going to be informed of his father's death. And I was called up to go and assess whether or not he could ride in the race. Must say, I wasn't feeling that well. I had a bit of a migraine. I didn't feel that fabulous. And I jumped in the car, drove over to Caulfield, and I had an audit process in my mind that I was going to go through, because I've got to think, what would the coroner say? Is my audit correct? Now, I might have made the wrong decision, but I was very comfortable with the audit process. So I went over, I assessed the situation. He rode. I was absolutely shitting myself because I thought, if there's a fall, it's going to be my fault, and I don't think it'll have anything to do with the news he's just had. However, I can just imagine how well it's going to go for me if something goes wrong. And as you know, horse races are imperfect things where things can happen. After the finish of it, the doctor said to me, "Oh, yeah, that was a great decision." And I said, "Well, it could have been wrong, you know." And he just looked at me, and I said, I was happy with my process. I was happy with sort of how I made the decision. It still could have gone wrong. And so this is the thing. You've got to be prepared to trust your process and constantly improve it if you find that it's not good. And that's the next part of it, review it. Once you've got your audit framework, review how your actual behaviours match with what you say you believe. Are you consistent? Umpires who are consistent, everyone's pretty happy with. Judges who are consistent, you build a reputation for being reliable. If there's a mismatch, right, make adjustments to your framework or your behaviours. Maybe you went red at some point, flipped your lid a little bit, got influenced by other things, in which case start learning what did that, what made that happen. And this is how you get better and better, and you have more comfort with the decisions you make, and you become a respected professional. Remember, we're dealing with a brain that has issues. We have a design problem. I've already said, it's designed for something else. And when we're under pressure, it can revert to a non-optimal way of functioning. And one of those things is the negative brain bias. Now, I think most of you will realise that we have a negative brain bias. We tend to focus on our own errors, usually to the exclusion of what we got right. And we often do it about other people as well. And so you'll often have people make an error, and you'll bring up something good they did, and they go, "Oh, I'm not going to make excuses, da, da, da." But we're not. We want to actually look at reality. If you've judged 5 classes and you've pinned one horse wrongly, right, look at what you did right and what you did wrong. That's reality, not the one you got wrong. And as a show jumping rider, I know as a young rider, I might jump 13 fences beautifully, but if I screw one up and I get a bad distance or something, that's all I would think about, until I learnt that that's actually not reality. That's the negative brain bias. Error sticks like absolute Velcro, whereas what you do right is like Teflon, okay? You have to actively think about this one, whereas error, I mean, it'll just show up because error is threatening and what you did right is not threatening. That's why we have such an affinity for it, because it's important you notice that there's a snake. It's not important you notice the little kitties and the, you know, the pretty flowers and everything, because it's nothing to do with your survival system. An easy way to go about this is you actually write down what you did wrong and what you did right. We're not ignoring your errors, but we need to have it balanced if you're going to be able to keep your lid on regularly, and particularly at the moment, given the circumstances we're under. And then once you've written down what the problem was, what you did well, you can just flick it into problem, challenge, solution, okay? It's a nice, simple way of making your problems line up rather than come at you all at once. You know, I often say my problems have to take a ticket. They've got to line up in an orderly manner like you do at the bread shop. If they want to get served, they're going to have to come at me one at a time, not all at once, because I can't do them effectively with my lid on if I've got them all running at me at one time. A good way to remember this particular process is, imagine you went to the, sorry, look at this cat's being so helpful. If you went to the doctor with a pussy toe, right, and the doctor said, that's a pussy toe, and you think, yes. And then he says, if you don't fix that pussy toe, you're going to end up getting gangrene, and then we're going to end up chopping your leg off. And at some point, you'd like him to go to the solution. So if it's a pussy toe, the challenge is not pussy toe. Solution is probably something like antibiotics or, you know, antiseptic. Now, most of our problems, we can run through this particular process and all of a sudden they're not as problematic. You know, if I make an error, right, I made an error, I pinned the third horse first, and in retrospect, I would have liked to have done different. Okay, we'll work out what got in the way of, you know, my judging on this day. The challenge is to be happy with how I pin the horses. And then you can come with the solution. And usually it'll take you back to your audit process. You know, it'll take you back to your audit process. This is this part. Right? We're having a look at what I liked and what I didn't like about how I went about the job. Notice how Johnny, through all his experience, he's been able to go, okay, break it into simple terms. You observe overall, you know, you look at the walk, you look at the trot, look on the straight line, look on the circle, right? Very nice. Now, obviously, we know lameness and horse problems are more complicated than that, but you don't have time to do that, and you don't have an X-ray machine, and you can't, you know, go down and do a flexion test. You can't do those things, so we have a simple process. And so that's where I really encourage you all to have a really simple process to be able to work on it. And part of that process needs to be, what triggers me? If somebody criticizes me, is that what triggers me? In which case, I've got to have a way to ground myself and be able to reset. You know, is it the top line, you know, reset to the manners, whatever it is you're wanting to reset to. You know, if you get indecisive, is that what triggers you? And you've got to go, really drop the anchor and go back to your process again. Self-auditing is fantastic because it gives you a rationale for your decisions. It reduces your stress. It increases your consistency, increases your credibility, and allows you to justify your decisions with ease and confidence. Now, sometimes you're going to make mistakes. Sometimes somebody will say, I think you were wrong. And you'll go through your process and you go, actually, I agree with you. In retrospect, yeah, that you know, you're probably right. And you'll gain a lot of respect if you're able to do that. However, it's your opinion. You're the expert on the day. You have informed opinions. It's okay for you to hold an opinion that isn't the same as somebody else's. You know, I've got this, you know, I've pinned the horse because I love its throat. I just love its presence. Its presence outweighed, in my opinion, the small fault that maybe the more correct horse, you know, someone could say that's a more correct horse, but I love this horse. I think he just absolutely, I can forgive some things in that horse. And I'm sure that happens with judges, you know, all the time. And the more experienced you are, the more credibility you got, the more you're allowed to do that. People will actually probably allow you to do that more. But you can explain it in an intelligent and ethical and logical manner, supported by your evidence. Remembering that a different opinion doesn't mean the other person is lying or they're wrong, they're just different. And wouldn't it be a shame if we all had the same opinion? I remember I had a show Galloway that went really well at royal shows and often didn't do so well at a local show. You know, now I know where I'd prefer the bias to be. I'd prefer the bias to be in the direction it was, because I care more about, you know, getting a bow at a royal than I do at Gymkhana or something. But, you know, there's going to be differences of opinion. And if you start off at the point where person one thinks X, person two thinks Y, then, you know, you discuss it, you may end up in the same position, but at least you'll feel comfortable with the audit process. Remember, your job is not to convince somebody that you're right. It's to be able to justify the decision that you've made. And there's an old saying, which I love, which is a man convinced against his will is of the same opinion still. So it's probably better you don't waste a lot of time with it. Just agree to differ and say, oh, well, we're all different, you know. One of the hard things for judges is being able to deal with, you know, criticism and praise. And I'd like to take you through just another audit process of how to deal with it. So when we're dealing with criticism and praise, right, you know, it's quite natural for us to feel a bit ordinary when somebody insults or belittles us, or to feel quite jolly when somebody praises us. However, when you are criticised, you've got to ask some questions. What is the motivation of the person who is belittling me? Is the person competent to hold an opinion, and is the opinion justified? Then, if the opinion's justified, there's something to learn, you know, and you can take some action on it. You know, you learn something. This is good. Even if it's served up to you in what I'd call a bit of a shit sandwich, you know, sometimes the delivery is not good, but there's something quite useful in that particular shit sandwich. If the opinion is not justified, you can then, because you've got a great audit system and you're quite confident in your process, you can explain why. If the other person is acting out of malice, test your ability to keep your lid on, okay? Because it's not your problem, right? What is your job is to stay calm and don't let it disrupt the rest of the day or influence your judging for the rest of the day, given that that's what your job is. So really important. I'll just go back through it again. What's the motivation? Sometimes people's motivation is not awesome. Are they competent to hold the opinion? Is the opinion justified? And that gives you your way. You can either learn something, you can explain something, or you can just decide that, you know, your only job is to stay calm. Give them $5 for giving you an opportunity to practice staying calm and keeping your lid on, because you need to meet people that flip your lid to be able to practice keeping it on. Now, it seems quite logical that we would think about criticism, but praise is very similar, right? We should follow the same process. When someone praises us, what's the motivation? Are they sucking up to me? Do they want something from me? You know, is the praise being given by somebody who actually understands and their judgment is valuable? Or do they just want to please me or flatter me because they want something in return? I think these are really important things when you're in an evaluative environment, I know that we, particularly if we're feeling a bit low, we love a bit of praise, but you know, sometimes you feel like having a shower after somebody praises you. Sorry, the cat just dropped something off the back. Sometimes you quite like it, but you know you shouldn't really like it because of who gave you the praise. So just, check on those things. What's the motivation? Is there something valuable in it? And are they actually, in this case, just wanting to suck up to me for other reasons? And the right objective in everything is not to avoid criticism or get praise. I call that the duck and suck approach, right? The objective is to do the right thing. And it's really hard to do the right thing when one's lid is off. And that's why when we're talking about all of this, it's all about learning about keeping the lid on so that you can be rational. And also, it's much more comfortable. I know if I crack the shits, I don't feel very good about it because normally, my response won't be the one that I would have done if I'd been in a calm state of mind. So I'll stop sharing so that I can see you all again, and I'm open for any questions you like.
Well, thanks, Lisa. I'll just let people just have a think for a second or two. Gosh, you covered some ground there. I just reflecting on my circumstances. During my working career, I did a lot of Myers-Briggs studies where they track your emotional intelligence, if you like.
Yeah.
And for me as a judge, I found that over the years that's changed from being more clinical and focusing on what's right and wrong to showing more empathy as I've got a bit older and a bit more, that caring nature as you get older. I think for me and maybe for other judges, it's important for them to understand too where they fit on that spectrum. You talked about judges, I think basically having a thick skin or having self-confidence. And I see that a bit with some judges. Some judges go into the ring really on the front foot, really full of their own importance, and other judges come in that are a bit more reserved and whatever, but they still do a good job. But I guess it's important to understand your persona and how you react and how others view that as well. Can you just touch on that a little bit about? I know you have, but could you touch a bit more on that?
No, very definitely. Look, having your lid on doesn't mean being a pompous ass. And the thing is, generally when people have big egos, they're way more brittle and it's a front, I mean, luckily for you boys, as you get older, your testosterone will drop, so you will be more empathetic because you're no longer suffering from testosterone poisoning. However, it's a really important thing. When you're in a position of power, you should be humble. You already hold all the cards. The poor little person that's been up all night, washing Nettie, they're at a disadvantage. They're not in power at all. And I think when you have high levels of power, there's more responsibility and you can be really empathetic. When I used to do the training of the stewards for Racing Victoria, given they've got all the cards, they never have to turn the volume up.
Yeah.
If you hold the cards, you don't have to turn the volume up. You don't have to posture and flex your muscles. All you have to do is be, really sensible, lid on. You'll find that when people flip their lids, they generally don't make the other people feel safer. They don't make them feel more comfortable. And when you're speaking to somebody, that's a really important thing. Like with that poor guy that came in that was going to bust a foofer that I explained to you about, he was, I was really I was genuinely concerned and kind to him. I had another racehorse trainer once just absolutely going off his head. And I stayed really calm, and he was fine. He said, you love the unlovables. You don't realise how terrible they are, Lisa. He's going off. And I said, well, I'm lucky. I'm not Judge Judy. I don't have to. That's not my decision to make. And about a year after that particular incident where he got very, very huffy and puffy, I saw him at Racing Victoria, and I thought, there's my man. And I thought he'll feel a little bit uncomfortable because he behaves a bit like he didn't behave that well. And so I went and gave him a little hip and shoulder, said, "It's the old team back together, mate," like this. Anyway, he said to the other people, he said, "I was very angry with her. I was very, very angry with her." And then he said, "I tried to get other people. I spoke to this one. I spoke to that one. I tried to get them to bag you out and they wouldn't." And I said, "Johnny, I think you're lazy." I said, "You didn't try hard enough, didn't ask enough people." And he said, I did. I said, no, mate. Yeah, I don't believe it. And he said, it was like being in a marching band and I thought I was stepping right and everyone else was wrong. And then I had to realise I was out of step. And it was, but using humour and genuinely not being shitty was really important. The same way as we are with young horses that are getting upset and everything. You don't jerk their teeth out and, well, maybe when you're young you might, but you get told off and then you learn to behave better. But, you don't do that. So, Graham, I think it's really important that when you have all the power, don't flex your muscles. Just quietly go about your business. I mean, by all means have good posture, but you just don't need to do it. I mean, I'm with people all the time that you might imagine in football clubs, there's a few egos, and I'm probably the smallest person in the room always, but I've also got my lid on. Another example is, I won't say what position, high up position person came to me and said, "I think I'm going to do this. What do you think?" And I said, "Nah, I don't think that's a very good idea." Anyway, he dropped it, came back and said, "So would it be suboptimal or catastrophic?" And I went, "Catastrophic." And he said, "Well, I might do it anyway." And I said, "As is your want, you are the big cheese." Right? And the poor CEO nearly pooed himself because he was thinking, "Oh my God, she's just going to get sacked." But I'm just doing it with a good heart and my intentions are good. And I think it's really important to remember that most of the time, the other people's intentions are good, even when they're going off their head like the trainer was. He didn't have bad intentions. He just flipped his wee lid.
Yeah.
And when somebody's lid is flipped, they're not going to operate that well. Well, no point me following them. That'd be like me, getting all tense on a baby horse. I will definitely get hurt if I do that. It's not smart.
Okay, Lisa, I think, Michael, did you put your hand up before? Did you want to ask a question, Michael Green?
No, I think it's Helen.
No, I didn't, but I just want to congratulate Lisa. And where have you been all of our lives? Because it's so friggin' sensible and it's getting back to basics.
Yes, it is.
Yep. And one thing I believe in all walks of life is there's no respect anymore. And it's not about the own individual. It's about what you've basically wrapped up, believing in yourself. But yeah, shit, you should have been here 10 years ago.
Well, I was.
Graham,
but
congratulations. If I don't get the chance, but Graham and everybody that's organised this, congratulations. 2 great speakers tonight. But Lisa, keep talking. It's awesome.
Thank you. Now, I think Helen's got a hand up.
Helen Doan, are you there?
No, I haven't.
Can everyone else see that white hand, or am I losing my mind?
No.
Oh, no, it's okay. It was my little thing on my cursor. It was on Helen's little square. Sorry about that.
Yeah. Lisa, just for my own, the way I process stress over the years, I sort of know that I need to prepare well before I go into a show ring. So as the judges all here tonight, we might get asked to judge interstate or New Zealand or wherever.
Yeah.
And I always try to pre-prepare, and that's just in my makeup. I know some other individuals that they thrive by just jumping into the deep end. Can you just sort of comment about that? I mean, I've been lucky that I've judged a lot around Australia and other places, but I find that for myself, I need that process and that procedure before I even step into the ring. I can't do it when I'm in the ring. But can you talk about different personalities and how that works?
Yeah, look, and people are different. And I think that Fred Astaire, and I'm looking around, so I don't feel too bad. There'll only be a couple of you who don't know who that is. But Fred Astaire had a great saying. He said, first you learn the steps, then you have style. And I think that all of us, when we're younger, we should try and have a process that then we can learn well enough to either we'll keep writing it down and preparing, which you're comfortable with, Graham, or it'll be so well learnt that then we can actually feel like we're just being intuitive. But as we know, I know as a rider that, and when I was a coach, that it was only a lot of training that allowed me to be intuitive. I had to learn the steps, and then you can have style. And the same goes for having a good eye. If you've got a particular process and it becomes well learnt, then it's almost beautiful, you know. And if you think about it, when you're watching horses move and everything, you know, most of the people here, there's so much information you can take in without actually realizing how much you're taking in. And so I think that it's fine if you've got that well-worked process. Most of the time you could probably go off instinct, right? Because that will work. However, when you're in a situation where you're under pressure and the lid's wobbling around a bit, it's great to have a map. Most of the time I know where I'm going, but I like to have Google Maps in case I don't. I like to have the steps there because that way I won't think that I'm doing the right thing while getting it wrong. And to just do a run through before you walk out of what do I want to see? If I saw a horse that just absolutely blew me socks off, what would that individual look like? Because that's often what we do. We have an individual in mind in our favourite horse, and then we tend to then look at how everything that gets brought in front of us lines up to that sort of ideal individual. I don't know whether I'm pretty sure everyone here will have particular ideas of what they love to see. And I think all those things, we owe it to competitors to have a process, but then let the art come into it as well.
Yeah.
You know, and that comes into, there's really objective things, and then there's things like presence, a horse's presence, you know, and all things being equal, the horse with presence will override a horse with less presence. But, you know, your idea of a horse with presence and mine might be a bit different, because maybe I had a horse that it was the bee's knees, in my opinion, and I won lots with it. I'm going to have a little bias there. Now, that's the beauty of judging, is as long as you've got your skeleton nice and solid, you're allowed to have some art, aren't you?
Yeah.
And wouldn't it be a shame, because you'd all pick the same horse, and then that's not fun, you know? That'd be like having Farlap at in every race, you know, and no one else gets a go. I mean, you'll have similarities, but I would imagine you'd have some differences as well, just on the basis of the way you've developed as, you know, horse connoisseurs, as it were.
Yeah.
What does everyone else think about that? About you've got your base, but then you've got your intuition, which is often faster, and it's usually quite accurate.
We're all a bit quiet out there at the moment.
That's all right. There's a thumbs up. Thank you. So now the one thing I would say about intuition, though, is, and I call it pattern recognition. You know, generally, if you see something that, you know, you don't get an alarm bell ringing, that's because it's okay. you'll get a little alarm bell, but you might not know what it is immediately. But I think always listen to the alarm bell because it's telling you to look further and deeper. When I was a younger rider, I used to think, oh, something's not quite right. And then, of course, growing up with a lot of male show jumping riders around me, they go, oh, don't be such, there's nothing wrong with the fucking thing. And what I learned was that if a little alarm goes off, it's because there is something. It's just early. And my pattern recognition will mean, because I know that horse really well, I work that horse all the time, there will be a something. So I learned to trust my gut, as it were, because an alarm bell doesn't go off unless there's something that has alerted you. You know yourself when you walk into the stable and you might groom a horse, right? 5 days in a row, no alarm bells. The 6th day and you think, oh, what's that? And you'll notice something. Might be something small, might be a little bit of fill, but it's only because you're so overtrained, you'll notice little variations on that. And I think Johnny was, saying, you've got that experience, that observational experience. If a little alarm bell goes off, doesn't mean there's something terribly wrong, but it does say, look, trust yourself. If you're an expert, trust yourself when you get a little alarm bell.
Yeah.
And they're the sorts of things that you can, when you're a young judge, you can second guess yourself on and talk yourself out of when there's actually something that's there. Yeah. And I'm sure everyone in this room has had that experience where you've talked yourself out of something, because usually because you didn't have a process and you didn't have time to work it out on the fly. Hence, if you've got a process, much easier.
Yeah. All right, Lisa. Well, look, thank you. It's been a great discussion tonight. And look, similar to the comments I made about Johnny, it's been great that you've been able to bring in your real life horse experiences. You've just got a wealth of knowledge around the psychology services and just thinking about your CV about dealing with, footballers, gymnasts, Paralympians. It's just amazing. And the way the human mind works, whether it's for a high level sports person or dealing with our judges that are put into a situation where they're judging for up to 8 hours a day in all sorts of heat weather and under all sorts of pressure. So some of the tips you've given us today should help them. I hope it does. I certainly got a lot out of it, Lisa, so thank you for that. You're never too old to learn, and the human brain's an amazing thing, the way you react and the things that you don't know you're doing, but your brain, that inert sort of activity that happens when you talked about that middle central part of your brain and where that comes from, the history of that through mankind. That's just amazing to think about it in those terms. So thanks for bringing that clinical look at it, but also the common sense approach to it as well. So look, thank you, Lisa, again. It's been a pleasure having you along tonight. And like I said to Johnny, I'll catch up with you in a day or two. We've got a nice bottle of something for you coming along as well. But thanks for your time and effort tonight.
Well, thank you all for listening to me. Bye.
Okay, thanks, Lisa. Okay, everyone, I'll just finish up now, just while Lisa's logging off. I just wanted to thank everyone again for their attendance. As I mentioned, we've had a good roll up from every state in Australia, apart from the Northern Territory. Janet in the UK, thanks for coming along tonight. And Adam as our chairman, thank you. It's been great having you along as well. Look, I enjoyed hearing from the speakers tonight. I learned a lot and I hope you did as well. And thanks, Michael, Debbie and the others that asked questions. Now, just a quick reminder. Deb, sorry, you want to ask a question? Jump on board, Deb.
Yeah, just a quick question, Graham. You
Yes.
said that you do a bit of preparation, so do I, but I was curious to know what kind of preparation you do before going into a big show.
Sure. Oh, look, every show is different and you have different degrees.
Because I read rules. I'm a rule person, so I'll go over, say, the Arabian derivative standards, because that's a range of different classes, isn't it? So
Yeah.
what do you do
Yeah,
specifically?
well, I'm the same. I always refresh my memory about our standard of excellence, always look at the rule book for the country or the area that I'm judging at.
And the
sometimes-
show.
And the show rule,
Yep.
depending on who you're judging.
Yep.
And I think about the arena and I think about the classes, particularly if you've got different types of saddle classes. We all know that they're quite complex these days, the rules. You can be judging 1 minute you're doing Western, next minute you're doing a bridle path hack class. So I like to get the brain into gear a day or two before and just think about the key things that I want to look for or watch out for. And not so much in Australia, but we're moving that way. But when you've got 3, 4 or 5 judges in the ring with you as well, just think about how you want to judge and how you're going to cope with that situation. And for lots of our new judges, we've touched on
time frames
before.
as well.
Yeah, you've got limited time frames with 4 or 5 judges around you, a ring steward, a ringmaster. So you've got to be prepared in your own mind, I think, about that you've got a minute and a half to evaluate those horses. So you've got to get ready for it and use your emotional intelligence, like Lisa was just explaining. You will be under pressure. So I think about those sorts of things before I go into any show. Doesn't matter whether it's a local ag show, it's just the way I am. And that's why I asked that question before to Lisa. Some judges I know, they just roll straight in. They don't have a rule book with them. They just, it pops out of their head. Good luck to them. But to me,
Crikeys.
I'm that sort of person that needs that.
I always carry the rule book, always.
Yeah.
That's me.
Yeah.
Because someone might come along and ask you a question or want you to verify something. So it's really handy to have the rule book.
Yeah, for sure.
You can't be in here in a double bridle in a novice class, for example.
Yeah.
Here's the rule, Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, thank you for that.
Look, and this is more about preparing for the classes, but, talk to your ring steward before the class, make sure they're aware of what your expectations are, find out, what's going on in the ring that day, how you're going to bring your champion reserves in, all those sorts of things, because they're just small stresses, but on the day, you don't want them when you're judging, you want to know what's going to happen. That's how I operate.
And some shows have lots of prizes as well.
Yeah.
Don't forget, this has got to have this prize and that prize for that particular champion and that supreme gets such and such. And sometimes we've got to think about that as well, don't we?
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway.
No, that's okay. Look, as I said, I'll just finish off now. Just a quick reminder to everyone that next Tuesday, so that's 1 week from today, we've got our 3rd seminar in this series. A registration flyer will come out tomorrow. And we'd ask you to please register for that ASAP. Our focus at that seminar will be on performance classes, and we've engaged some highly respected judges and experts in their fields, and they're going to comment on how to judge a range of performance classes, side saddle classes, and also harness classes. So I'd welcome you and encourage you to sign up for that straight away. It'll come around pretty quickly. Just a plug for the Paralympics. They started up tonight. The opening ceremony was today. We all love watching the Olympic equestrian events. So the Paralympic equestrian events kick off on Thursday and they go through till Monday. They're on 7 Mate. So I'd just encourage you to watch some of those and cheer some of our Australians on. And finally, look, this is just a personal message from me. The whole country is hurting at the moment with lockdowns. We're all feeling fatigued and isolated. Try and stay positive and reach out and support others if you can. And, ask for help if you need it. There are government or state services that are available, or talk to trusted friends. But think twice about social media, whether you want to post something and just how it's going to be perceived and what your reaction might be. This is what Lisa was just talking about. But look, as a judge, try to be a positive role model to your family, your friends, and the broader community. So look, I just wanted to say, stay healthy. This COVID virus is getting worse at the moment. It's not getting better, but just take care, everyone. Thanks for attending this 2nd series, and we'll see you hopefully next week at our 3rd one. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Graham. Thank you.
Thanks, Graham.
Thanks.
Much appreciated.
It's okay.
Good night,
Good night.
everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.
Great work, guys.
Thanks, Helen.
Bye.